Good evening from New York. Late today, June becoming the deadliest month of the Afghan conflict for Allied forces with 76 deaths, and the month still has 7 days to go. President Obama this morning relieving General Stanley McChrystal of his command in Afghanistan. In our fifth story, those developments in all likelihood not related in any way. The president having accepted McChrystal's forced resignation because of the general's scornful remarks about the commander-in-chief and other administration officials in the now infamous Rolling Stone magazine interview. At a Rose Garden news event, the president saying General McChrystal's explosive comments and those of his top aides left the general unfit to lead.
Today I accepted General Stanley McChrystal's resignation as commander of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. I did so with considerable regret, but also with certainty that it is the right thing for our mission in Afghanistan, for our military, and for our country. War is bigger than any one man or woman, whether a private or a president. And as difficult as it is to lose General McChrystal, I believe that it is the right decision for our national security. The conduct represented in the recently published article does not meet the standard that should be set by a commanding general.
The first sign this morning that General McChrystal was out coming when he left the White House after his private meeting with the president in the Oval Office, not sticking around for a separate meeting on Afghanistan with the entire national security staff in the Situation Room, which was held an hour and a half later. General McChrystal saying in a statement that he tendered his resignation out of a desire to see the mission in Afghanistan succeed, adding that he strongly supports Obama's strategy and he remains deeply committed to the coalition forces, partner nations, and the Afghan people. The president coupling the news of McChrystal's departure with the announcement of his replacement, General David Petraeus, perhaps the nation's best-known military name for having turned around the war in Iraq 3 years ago to the degree that it did turn around. General Petraeus accepting what is, in essence, a demotion. As the head of U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, he was McChrystal's boss. Let anyone convince you to relocate from Tampa to Kabul, and let's face it, you've won their gratitude.
And General Petraeus and I were able to spend some time this morning discussing the way forward. I'm extraordinarily grateful that he has agreed to serve in this new capacity. It should be clear to everybody he does so at great personal sacrifice to himself and to his family.
Petraeus likely to be confirmed quickly at next week's hearings. Today at the Capitol, Republican lawmakers who will vote on his nomination hailing him almost as if he were Obi-Wan Kenobi.
We think there is no one more qualified or more outstanding leader than General Petraeus to achieve a successful conclusion of the Afghan conflict. The hearing for General Petraeus's confirmation will probably be the fastest in the history of the Armed Services Committee.
Dave Petraeus is our best hope. If things don't change, nobody can pull it out in Afghanistan.
Time now to call in our own political analyst, Richard Wolff, author of Renegade, The Making of a President. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
The talk yesterday was President Obama had a choice to make about firing General McChrystal. To your knowledge now, did they ever entertain a choice?
Well, I think there was a choice in one area, but first of all, there are two areas that there was no choice in. As Commander-in-Chief, asserting civilian control over the military, there's no choice here. This is a question about insubordination and discipline through the ranks, so no choice there. In terms of the strategy, I think, again, the question comes down to, was this person the only one who could execute it? That there is a choice on. There was a question about whether McChrystal, as the father of this plan, was the only figure who could execute it. In the end, they came up with an alternative. So I think there was a choice about that specific area, but when it comes to discipline, when it comes to leadership, the assertion of leadership, there was no choice.
By getting General Petraeus to replace him, did the president make it almost impossible for the Republicans to criticize him on this? Did he inoculate himself to some degree politically?
Politically, for sure. There is always going to be a question from Republicans about the strength of not just this president, but Democrats in general. Petraeus was a stroke of genius in one sense, because, as you heard from Lindsey Graham, it becomes not just a question about the president's determination to stick with a strategy. If Petraeus cannot make this work, then nobody can. He can then go out and say, look, I tried my best on this. If it works, Petraeus is a hero and he's a hero, and if it doesn't work, you have mapped out a plan for withdrawal.
Would this have been an opportunity, or would this, because of the nature of the disagreement with McChrystal, would this have been the worst possible time for the president to do anything in the way of strategic changes? Was this an opportunity to say, no, this isn't working, we're getting out, or is the path for that conceivably advanced in the immediate future because of this change?
It would have been tough to do it on any kind of timeline that we've just seen, because this did move so quickly. But remember that the strategy that the president outlined has inbuilt review stages in it. There's going to be a full review in the fall, and then there is this really sharp timeline. If this doesn't turn around in Afghanistan anytime soon, then in a year's time there will be a reversal of the troop flow and a drawdown. And by the way, one of the most troubling pieces in this Rolling Stone story was this notion that McChrystal could somehow bounce the president into adding more troops in there. Well, Petraeus, his successor, has some experience of that. He tried to do so when candidate Obama went to Iraq. He said his withdrawal plans were premature. He should maybe rethink them. And in fact, those troops are going to be coming out, those combat troops will be coming out of Iraq this summer. So, you know, it's not easy to bounce this guy, and strategy reviews are really something he controls very, very closely.
So what happens next summer, presuming the president himself wants to start withdrawing troops from Afghanistan as is currently scheduled? Is there any softness around there? Is there more to worry about the possibility that somebody, if not General Petraeus, somebody would be able to, as you said, bounce this president?
Well, look, when you look at that West Point speech that he gave when he added these extra troops, he was incredibly skeptical. He said this has to show it's working for it to proceed. And that's where the question of trust, the question of team cohesion comes into play with McChrystal. Could he trust their assessment that the strategy was working based on what we've seen out of the offensive in Marja? It's highly doubtful. And unless you have confidence in the commanders that this is going to work, this strategy is going to work, there is absolutely no need to move away from the president's plan, which is that these troops should start coming back in a year.
MSNBC's Richard Wolff, the author of Renegade, as always. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Keith.